Tom wasn't the first to choke on pricing for profit, but anyway. Before I get into my portion of the program, I'd like to answer Lucy's question. Before the break, she had asked, how do you deal with the gatekeepers? And not necessarily, she told me at the break, the person that's taking the initial call, but sometimes the person in the middle. And my approach has always been the same, regardless of who's in the middle there. And that is to show them the respect and consideration that they deserve for whatever their role is, and seek their help. I just very candidly say to them, look, this is what I've got to offer. I'm not sure whether or not it'd be of value to your boss or to your superior there. What would be the best way to be able to get this information to you and ultimately him or her, so that you have an idea of whether or not it's valuable, and then you can decide from there. So I engage them and ask for their help, and our natural tendency is to help people if we can. So when I ask for their help, and I'm including them and I'm giving them explanations for why it could have value and so on, well, it's showing them a sign of respect for the fact that they're intelligent people and they can see an opportunity if it presents itself, and they know how to take action on that. So implicit in that approach are all of those messages, if you will, that make it easier to make that happen. So that's what's always worked best for me. And if you get somebody that's just adamant about being a roadblock, then you may just want to go pursue another prospect. Okay. Well, in case there was any doubt, I know Alan used the term alignment quite a bit in his presentation. So guess what I'm starting with? Alignment, right? We are very serious about this, and this is what really makes life a lot easier, a lot more productive, and a lot more fun for us. Because the goal here is to align the sellers and the buyers, and alignment produces, as Alan pointed out, much better results financially, but it's also a lot more fun, as we're going to see in a few minutes. And I know everybody's making money. Almost everybody I know makes money, but I don't know that everybody I know is having a lot of fun while they're doing it. So we want that for you. We want it to be a combination of having fun and making money in the process. Now, in order to do that, we have to get to those prospects that Alan's graph was talking about, where you got high interest, high qualification. And one of the quickest ways to do that is to become very clear about a profile of who that ideal customer is. And historically, what we have looked at is demographics to do that. And then Alan alluded that in his presentation. This is the environment we grew up in, right? As business people, whenever you asked anybody who their ideal customer was, they'd quote demographics, and demographics were touted as the real measure of whether or not somebody was a prospect. And it does a good job of telling you who is buying, but it doesn't answer the question why they're buying. And so I'll give you an example to illustrate the difference. With demographics, let's assume for a moment that you own a Mercedes dealership. And you know that all of your customers have six-figure incomes and they live in certain zip codes. That's the demographics, and it's accurate. But it doesn't answer the question, why are there people in those zip codes with six-figure incomes who are buying Hummers, Audis, BMWs, and Lexus? Okay? We don't know. And if we don't know that, how do we appeal to the people in those zip codes with that kind of income that are right for us? How do we avoid, as Alan suggested, wasting our time with people who are never going to buy because they don't fit? And that's where psychographic profiling comes in. And psychographic profiling gets to the why. It helps us understand what it is that's really motivating people to buy, and what it is they value and why they value it. So that's really the missing piece of the puzzle if we're focusing strictly on demographics. So again, to give you a sense for how psychographic profiling works, I'll use an example from my own business. And this is one of the ways that I stumbled upon psychographic profiling. And a lot of people have grand plans. I seem to be more of a stumbler, and I stumble onto a lot of good things, and this was one of them. But in my business, I had a client who hounded me to write a book based on a management system I'd used in corporate. And what she did, I coached her for a half a day on this system, and within a month, she cut her billing cycle from 3 weeks to 2 days. No overtime, no change in the software, no new staff. And they freed up so much cash that they paid off the line of credit and left it untapped for 4 months. And she hounded me to write this book. Now, when I was in corporate and I used the system, the most dramatic result that I got was that my team and I cut 16,000 hours out of a 40,000 hour budget, and we were providing higher quality and more information to management than had ever been done previously. So 40% reduction in time with better results. So I had a lot of good results to go to the market with. And I developed a training program along with the book, took it to the market, got lots of interest, lots and lots of interest. And my close rate was abysmal. Absolutely horrid. And I kept, after every call, I go, who wouldn't want results like this? I mean, come on, who wouldn't want these kind of results? And when I actually got serious about answering that question, what I discovered is that there are 3 types of managers. There's the autocrat. The autocrat views employees as automatons. So you key in the instructions, you flip a switch, and they better darn well do what they're told, right? Okay, so that's one. And the second type is a paternalist. Now, paternalists, for some reason, feel a moral responsibility to provide employment to people who aren't necessarily top tier. And consequently, they don't expect a lot of them. And then the third group are the engagement managers. These are the people who like to engage their employees in identifying new opportunities, streamlining processes, and solving problems. Well, my program was designed for the third group. And I was spending a lot of time talking to the first 2. So once I realized this, I knew what the problem was. I knew why my close rate was so abysmal. So what I did then is I changed my marketing. And this is one of the beauties of the psychographic profile, that you begin to use language that resonates more effectively with your ideal audience. So before the profile, my marketing message basically said, if you'd like results like this, give me a call. And I had a lot of calls. But after the fact, after I realized what the profile was, my marketing message was, if you're the kind of manager who likes to engage your employees in identifying new opportunities and you want these kinds of results, give me a call. Now, I got a lot fewer calls, but my close rate went through the ceiling. The sale was virtually made before they called. Why? Because these managers and I shared the same values. See, psychographic profiling is about the values, the behaviors, and the characteristics of the people that you're dealing with. And when their values, behaviors, and characteristics are aligned with yours, then the sale is almost consummated before you actually sit down with them. Because those managers knew that this worked. I didn't have to educate them. If you think about it, every time I met with an autocrat or a paternalist, I was in essence asking them to change their nature. I mean, how inane is that? I mean, when I looked at that in hindsight, it's like, Dale, what were you thinking? There's just no way. As human beings, we're not wired to do that. The autocrat's going to say, well, this has always worked for me. Why am I going to change? Why do I want to spend all that time doing that? Paternalists would say, well, gee, Dale's kind of harsh because if people don't meet his expectations, they're gone, But the engagement managers, we were on the same page. They got it. And that doesn't mean an autocrat's wrong or a paternalist is wrong. It just means it wasn't a good fit. So it's not like I was wrong, right and they were wrong. It's just not a good fit. And if we recognize that, then we avoid a lot of time and headache for each other. So it made the marketing so much easier. And when I got a call, the likelihood of it being one of those people that were wherever they were on the spectrum, but they were going to be qualified and they were going to have some interest, right? So they're at least moving forward with that. And like Alan, I invite questions at any point here. So our comments are, feel free to disagree if you disagree. So it makes the marketing a whole lot easier, and it does a better job of attracting the kind of people that are going to be ideal prospects for you. And you don't waste as much time in calls with people who aren't good prospects. It also helps you qualify prospects more effectively. I could actually qualify a prospect with one question. Somebody called and said they were interested. I could qualify them with one question. Now, no salesperson worth their salt is going to rely on one question to qualify, and I never did either. But typically, what I discovered was that typically, the vast majority of the time, whatever follow-up questions I used just affirmed what I learned in that initial question. So if somebody called and expressed an interest in it, during that conversation, I would ask them, well, if you had an employee that was doing this, how would you deal with it? And the autocrats would say, well, I tell them you do this and this and this and that, and so, all right, I know I'm talking to an autocrat. This is probably not going to work, right? If it was a paternalist, they'd say, well, we'll provide a little more training. We may bring in a coach. Or we'll have somebody mentor them. Or, if it's really severe enough, maybe we'll just shift the work to somebody else, okay? Not a good candidate. But the engagement manager said, well, I'd sit down with them and we'd have a discussion about what's getting in their way. Can we figure out what's causing the problem and what do we need to do to work around? So, all right, now I'm talking to the kind of person that's going to really buy this program and get something out of it. So again, it makes life a lot simpler in the sales call, because when you can qualify within a few questions and then candidly say to the person if they don't fit, if I was talking to an autocrat or a paternalist, I could very candidly say to them, I'm not going to be the right solution for you. And here's why. This is your natural style. And that's fine. But what I'm going to be proposing is contrary to what your natural style is, and it's not going to work. It's going to be very frustrating. I'm going to be asking you to do things that are contrary to your nature, and that just doesn't work well. So let's save each other a lot of time and energy and money and just not get engaged with this. And it was interesting because those people, when they would meet me later on or introduce me to a friend of theirs, say, man, you got to talk to Dale. If you haven't talked to Dale before, you got to talk to Dale because he'll tell you the God's honest truth. I wasn't right. He wasn't right for me, but and he told me. So you can count on him to tell you the truth. He's not going to get you into something that's not going to make sense for you. So very powerful in terms of generating referrals as well. Now, the question is, how do we create this psychographic profile? How do we actually get to the point where we know specifically who we're looking for? And the process that I use is a three-pronged approach. And the first one is I look at the company's offerings. I do an interview. This is an interview process. And what I do is I sit down with the owner of the company. And if they have a sales force, I may also sit down with the sales force. But I start with the owner and I ask them, why did you create your offerings the way you did? What was missing in the marketplace? What did you feel was missing that you incorporated into your offerings that made them different and made them better and made them more valuable? Because when I get that insight, then I have a baseline behavior value characteristic, right? Because whether we realize it or not, each and every one of us creates our offerings based upon our own values, what's important to us. So why would we not start there? So once I get that, and some people say, well, how do you do that? How do you know when you've reached that? I said, very easy, because in the conversation, they'll start telling me all the logic stuff, blah, 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 and it's just monotone. And all of a sudden, they'll hit on what's really important to them, what really excites them about what they do, and they become more animated. Their faces light up, their gestures are more pronounced, there's an excitement and energy level that didn't exist before. So, okay, now we got it. That's where we are. That's what's really going to make this work. So I get that perspective, first of all. Then I ask them, tell me about a couple of your really enjoyable customers. And not the most profitable, people you really have fun working with. And why is it so much fun to work with them? And what they'll tell me is basically the same values and characteristics that we identified in their offerings. The same kind of thing. An Edward Jones wealth advisor that I was describing this to said to me, he said, I don't know what the profile is for my ideal customer, but I know what you're saying. He said, last night I spent some time with a young couple, and he said, they don't have a lot of money yet at this point. But he said, I had more fun working with them last night than the law should allow. And he said, I was driving home and I thought, man, if I had 50 like this, I'd be in heaven. So once he gets a picture of why it was so much fun to work with them, then it helps clarify what that ideal customer profile is. Does that make sense? Any question? And then the third component is the profitable customers. We look at their most profitable customers, and the question I'm asking there is, what value are they seeing that your other customers aren't seeing? Why is it that they're willing to pay higher prices? Why are they ordering larger quantities? What makes them so much more profitable? And so we get this triangulated view, these three perspectives on the behaviors, the values, the characteristics of an ideal customer, and we blend them together, we come up with a very good profile that helps us know specifically what it is that these people value and why they're choosing your products and services and your offerings, and where that alignment is between your values, your behaviors, your characteristics, and theirs. And that's how we develop the ideal customer profile. Now, when we have all these things together, making the sale, as I said before, is almost a slam dunk. It's not when, or it's when, not if. And when we use Alan's process for that nurture marketing, then we just enhance that. Because if they value what you're offering, and they may or may not be ready to buy right now, but if they value what you're offering, the sale's basically made. We just need to be there, as Alan says, and ready to sell to them when they're ready to buy. And price, by the way, is irrelevant. Because in my case with that training program, if that manager already knew it was going to work and was getting results with it, I didn't have to educate him on that. I could demonstrate that I could get better results than he was. Well, he'll pay for the better results. As long as the result he's going to get is a little bit better than what he's paying for, he'll pay the price. So price is not an issue in there as well. And from there, what we see again is the alignment theme coming here. And what we start with is the psychographic profiling. So if you think of the old funnel system, how do you get the right things into the funnel, the right people into the funnel, the right prospects? Well, the psychographic profiling does that because it helps you develop marketing messages that resonate with the people who share the same values, behaviors, and characteristics that you do, who are going to be very highly motivated people who are qualified. You have to determine whether or not they're qualified, but if they've got the budget and they're qualified in terms of the authority to buy, you've got everything you need there. That then translates, as we saw, into marketing messages that attract those kinds of people and actually ferret out the ones that don't. After I changed my marketing message to say, if you're the kind of manager, and I described an engagement manager, well, autocrats would look at that and say, well, yeah, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't work for me. All I do is this. Or our paternalists would say, well, gee, that doesn't fit my approach. So, I'm not going to do that. So it saved me that time, and really, more importantly than the time, and I know Kathy also talks about the energy, isn't it? It doesn't, in some respects, it doesn't matter how much time I have. It depends on my energy level during that time. And what my clients consistently tell me is that with the psychographic profiling, they said they get such a clear picture of who their ideal customer is, what it is they value, and how much they value it, that it allows them to command higher prices. But they also say they have more fun doing business because in one call, they can determine whether or not that prospect is a good fit. And if it's not, they're very comfortable walking away from that situation. Because what they tell me is that in the past, I would have sweat blood over, what could I have said differently? What could I have done differently? How do I get back in the door? And now they know it's just not a good fit, and they can save the time and energy they would have spent doing those things to pursue prospects that do fit the profile. And it makes it more fun for them. Well, you can imagine. We've all lived that roller coaster at one point in our careers, right? It sounds like a promising thing, and then now it goes down. How do I try to get back in? And no, you get rid of the roller coaster because in one call whether or not that's going to work. So the marketing messages are attracting prospects that are a lot more solid prospects than you had previously, and you employ Alan's process. If the people are sales ready, that 27% are ready, you go ahead and close the sale. If not, you kick that back to the marketing group and let them continue nurturing. And to Tom's point earlier, you'll get signals from them, from that drip marketing campaign, that nurture marketing campaign, that'll let you know when to go back in with the salespeople. So that's the process that we use in defining who the ideal customer is, and then providing a good, solid base of prospects for Alan's process. And with that, we're open for questions. I've got an ebook on psychographic profiling, how to sell more quickly with less effort. It's available on my website, pricingforprofitbook.com. It's available there. Thank you, Alan. Yeah.
What was the name of
The ebook is Psychographic Profiling, How to Sell More Quickly with Less Effort. And the website again is pricingforprofitbook.com. Any other questions? Okay, so the question is, in today's world with privacy being such an issue and all the data collection that's going on with Google and Facebook and all these other behemoths out there, how do we balance the psychographic profile with that? Well, in actuality, these large companies are using that data, what they call big data, to try to craft those profiles. And I'm not sure how successful they really are at that. I'll give you an example. I was looking for some new shoes, and the only Bostonians are the only ones that fit comfortably for me. I've got a strange foot, but anyway, I went out there because I used to have a loafer with some tassels on it, and that's what I liked. Well, they didn't have that, so I visited about 4 sites, and none of them had it. Well, every time after that I'd go out and do a search, a little box would pop up with that, well, if I went to 4 or 5 places and couldn't find what I was looking for, why are you still showing me ads for it? So I'm not sure it's really an effective marketing approach. What I'm doing with psychographic profiling is an interview process. We're not necessarily collecting data on any given individual, but we're creating a profile and then creating marketing messages to attract people who have that interest already. Then we're not dispersing any of that information to anybody else. So privacy really isn't an issue with the approach that I've outlined there. And the information I'm gathering is typically from the company itself. So I'm speaking to the owners about why they created their offerings the way they did. We talk to them and the salespeople about who their most enjoyable customers are and what makes them enjoyable and which are their most profitable customers, so that we can begin to create a profile to attract more of those kind of people. But we're not gathering information directly from the prospects, from the customers. We're gathering it in-house and then using that. Now, if you wanted, we could add some customer surveys and that sort of thing to help gather some more information, but we do that with the privacy disclosure, that we wouldn't use this for any other purpose, so we wouldn't share their information with anybody else. Hopefully I answered your question. Long answer to a short question. Other questions? Well, thank you very much for coming. I appreciate it.